All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the channel. It is Tuesday, and you know what that means. Time to continue our series in Manifest Your Destiny. Dr. Wayne W. Dyer, 9 spiritual principles for manifesting. What he says for getting everything you want. And we're on the second principle of manifesting. Trusting in yourself is trusting the wisdom that created you. First principle was becoming aware of your highest self and coming to know that within you, each and every one of us, ladies and gentlemen, is a divine capacity to manifest and attract all that we need or desire. But this is such a powerful idea or statement. Dr. Wayne Dyer suggests that we reread and savor it before we begin this journey. If we have done just that. And the mantra for this is I or you have a divine ability to manifest and attract what we need or desire. Becoming aware of our highest self doesn't happen through physical effort, nor can one rely upon supernatural techniques such as invoking angels to do this heavenly work for you. What is essential, ladies and gentlemen, is that we learn that we are both a physical body in a material world and a non-physical being, a spiritual being who can gain access and has access to a much higher level. And that higher level is within each and every one of us and is reached through the many stages of our personal development. And Dr. Wayne Dyer goes through the 4 stages of personal development as laid out by the archetypes of Dr. Carl Jung, which is the stage of the athlete and the warrior and the statesperson, when we begin to turn from ourselves and conquering in our physical appearance and who's the best, to the stage of the statesperson, which is the stage of life in which we have tamed our ego and we begin to shift our awareness. And in this stage, we begin to want to know what is important to the other person. And then finally, the stage of the spirit. Regardless of your age or position, you recognize our truest essence, the highest self. And when we know our highest self, we are on our way to becoming a co-creator, learning to manage the circumstances of our lives and participating with assurance in the act of creation. You become a manifester. And so today, we're on the second principle. Trusting yourself is trusting the wisdom that created you. And most importantly, in this principle is this idea of trust. So thank you for being here, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for joining me on this journey on the channel, supporting the ideas and the philosophy that we try to share here to help people in their lives, because we're all dealing with struggles in our lives and we need this kind of philosophy and psychology to help us get through those struggles in our lives that we do need to go through to grow through. But I think there is a way that we can go through the things that we are supposed to struggle through, to learn from and grow without actually suffering very much at all. But this may be way out there. But once again, thank you for being here. I love and appreciate each and every one of you, and we are reading this for purposes of teaching and commentary and expanding the mind, so that through an increased awareness, we can hopefully increase the quality of our lives, and also for a little bit of entertainment. So once again, we're on the second principle of manifesting from Dr. Wayne Dyer, and this is all about trust. But how can we come to learn to trust ourselves? Well, we have to recognize the wisdom that created us. I mean, I'm not responsible for the creation of my body and the digestion of my food, the growing of my hair or my nails, or the beating of my heart. All of these natural functions that are going on, that if we, in our human perception, had any attempt to run all this or to try to control all of this natural functioning, we would fail miserably, terribly, and we would have no ability to operate all this in such a perfect way that it is happening automatically. The Tao Te Ching from 2,500 years ago, and Lao Tzu says that God, this force, this natural life force that flows through everything, that is universal, which means there is nowhere that it is not, so it is within you, and it also is within everything that you take to be missing from your life or everything that you would desire to manifest into your life. It is universal, so you are one with those things. And trusting is learning to trust in that wisdom that is responsible for all of the going-ons of life. Once again, the Tao Te Ching, I was about to say a minute ago, says the Tao does nothing, but leaves nothing undone. Learning to trust, Wayne Dyer begins, may be difficult in the beginning. It will be an exercise of futility if you rely upon your mind to create trust. Because remember, the mind is working off of the ego, which is survival. This is because the mind works on material problems by interpreting sensory data. We turn towards spiritual matters, the mind to come up with intellectual answers by attempting to use proofs and logic and theoretical reasoning. It demands assurance and proof to establish tangible results. In contrast, the method of the heart, focused on spiritual understanding, is an intuitive recognition of the value of love, whereas the mind attempts to know the spirit by setting up conditions that must be met logically for there to be a release of this love. And we're not talking about romantic love. This is the idea of, instead of just being a loving being or a person or being a kind person, be love. Instead of being loving sometimes, you must be it rather than doing it temporarily. This whole thing about our senses, though, about our minds working on these problems, trying to interpret them by sensory data, when it comes to the spiritual realm or your highest self or manifesting, this goes beyond logic and what our senses tell us is possible. Because when we use our senses, we can look out and we can see, well, I am this, and this is separate from me, and this is here. But we know that on a deeper level, all things are one. And there is this connected oneness. And to trust our senses would be to trust something that isn't entirely the reality. When we look at memory or the way that one person sees something and another person sees it, we see that we have a selective memory. And what it is we actually remember isn't exactly the way that everything always happens. And so, leaning entirely on our senses for a breakdown of what we should or shouldn't believe about ourselves or what is capable for ourselves is not the correct way to go, because we know that our senses don't give us all of the information, and it's very selective. It demands assurance and proof of established tangible results based on this interpretation of sensory data. But we need to begin to turn towards the spirit and the heart. And this attempt, the mind attempts to know the spirit by setting up conditions that must be logically met for there to be some kind of release of love. The heart employs intuitive love as its way. It is not a conclusion of reasoning, but it is the way of spontaneity, not the result of bargaining with the intellect. The heart trusts that the inner wisdom that is within each one of us, that it feels and spontaneously knows, whereas the mind demands specific evidence before it will ever trust. And so, most importantly, seeing already here is the word trust. And trusting in yourself means trusting in this force, this God force, and the wisdom that created us. When we know God as an unseen, loving, and accepting power at the heart of everything, allowing each one of us to make our own choices, then God is a trusted part of our nature. Now, I'm going to begin the section where we're at now. We went through all of that last week and in previous videos in this series, and now we begin the section in the second principle, trusting yourself and trusting the wisdom that created you. This section is entitled Being All Things at Once, being in all things at once. Dr. Wayne Dyer says here, quote, authentic trust is only available through the knowing heart. When you can enter into this trusting space, everything will come to you that belongs to you because you have created the inner capacity to receive it. The irony here is that when you wish to receive is a part of you. So let me say that again, because remember, if it is universal, there is nowhere that it is not, which means it is within you and all the things that you imagine to be missing from your life, that which you desire to manifest. So if you are already a part of that which you wish to create, then all it is a realignment or an activation of a new part of yourself. The irony is, though, to continue with what Dr. Wayne Dyer says, is that what we wish to receive, we so often think it isn't a part of us. It's separate. It's out there. It's something we have to get to. But what we wish to receive or manifest is a part of us. This can be a troublesome concept to grasp for us because of the ego's attachment to being separate from everything and being special and individual and giving ourselves status and based, on the mask of our persona and our identity and our success or lack thereof or whatever it be. This ego attachment to being separate and special, and nothing in our rational mind could ever convince us that water is made up of two parts of hydrogen and one part oxygen. It appears to be a fluid that flows and has nothing to do with gases. But once again, how much can we trust our senses? Well, it appears to be a fluid that flows and has nothing to do with gases. But when we subject water to scrutiny, its constituted elements become manifest, and so it is with the idea of being in all things at once. Nothing in our everyday experience gives us much reason to believe that our mind has, as one of its constituents, something invisible that is in all living things. Yet, when we examine our life force using quantum mechanics, we find that this energy is indeed not a particle, but we are a waveform, an energy, and we've talked about this many times in the past few weeks and months. But we are this energy that is the same thing in all life, in everything that we see in the physical realm. There is a wave, an energy, a frequency that is non-physical, that is the source of and is responsible for everything that we see here. Nothing in our everyday experience gives us much reason to believe that our mind has one of its constituents, something invisible that is in all living things. But once again, we can see this through an examining of the quantum realm. You trust in the universal energy when you accept this quote-unquote irrational fact. At your basic core, you are not only worthy of trust, but you are the life force that exists everywhere. If you truly trust in this notion, you realize that everything that you perceive as missing from your life is a part of the very same energy that you are. And manifesting becomes the art of bringing to yourself that which you already are. In other words, a realignment, a re a correction of path, a correction of expression, a correction of self-beliefs, self, getting rid of limiting beliefs and negative self-beliefs. But it's not our fault. We've been taught this. We've been taught to believe that we are limited and that we don't have this capacity to activate the divine power within each one of us and become a co-creator with God. But we do have this ability, and it's become more known to more people as more time goes by and we begin to research more into this area. Manifesting becomes the art of bringing into alignment yourself, that which is already a part of you. In a sense, see, this seems irrational once again to our senses and to our logical mind. But if we're going to stick with our logic and our senses, manifesting is going to continue to be an impossibility for us. I would argue that statement and say that we're all doing it all the time, normally unconsciously. So conscious manifesting on purpose is what we're talking about here. In a sense, it is like thinking of the things you want as being on a string that is infinitely long, but is nevertheless still attached to you in some invisible way. It is only a matter of trusting and firmly knowing, having a personal knowing. And a difference between a belief and a knowing is a conscious contact, something that you have consciously experienced for yourself. And so it is only a matter of trusting and knowing that you can bring that string and whatever is in the distance on that string to you, and whatever is supposed to come to your life will be there when you have developed the capacity and the personal space, honoring your worthiness to receive. This is a section in a chapter that will come later in this series, but is most important to this process of spiritual manifesting. But honoring your worthiness to receive it, you cannot receive it or even come close to manifesting what you desire if you have an absence of trust in yourself as an extension of the God force, the divine intelligence. I like to think of God, Wayne Dyer says, as the ocean, and of myself as a glass. Think of yourself this way now, and if we dip the glass into the ocean, we will have a glass full of God. No matter how we analyze this, it will still contain God. Now, if the glass of God is not as big as, quote unquote, the ocean, nor is it omniscient or omnipotent. It doesn't have the same power as the ocean does, a glass of water. However, it is still a part of the ocean. It is still water. It is still God. And so this metaphor, Dr. Wayne Dyer says, allows him, and it should help us to allow ourselves to trust both in ourselves and simultaneously in the wisdom that is responsible for creating us and everything that we see. And we can begin, hopefully, to see the oneness for ourselves. I've deliberately chosen, Wayne Dyer says, not to use many quotations in this book, but I want to emphasize that every spiritual master and all of the saints, teachers, gurus, or priests throughout history have espoused this very same advice to us, that we can do all the things that great masters have done and even greater things, that the power is within each and every one of us. This perennial philosophy connects all of humanity, from tribal and ancient to civilized and present times, and it is the message that God, the force, the Tao, the grand organizing universal intelligence, is within and outside every living thing. So it is both. Also, there is a world we are a part of that is not subject to the changing world of time and space. Moreover, we are presently a part of that invisible spirit world. Since it is everywhere, and it is not only within you, but it is you, the meaning of this is that God is not to be found so much as discovered within yourself. So once again, we're not looking outside of ourselves somewhere and something to try to find God, to try to find the force, the source, whatever it is you want to call it. But rather, it is to be found within each one of us. There was a student that once asked his master and said, "Master, how is it? Where must I go to find God and to know God?" And the master said, "Nowhere. You do not need to go anywhere." The student was perplexed by this, and the master said, "Go think on this and come back." And after some time, the student did come back and said, "I'm still unsure, master. I've tried to sit, and I have looked around and waited for God to come out and appear before me." The master said, "No, you still don't got it. There is nowhere that you must go to find God, and it will not come out and appear before you when you are looking for it. But this does not mean that you will not see it everywhere you go." And so the student began to realize maybe what the master was meaning here. The master said, "Go now and meditate on this and come back when you think you have got it." And so the student comes back the third time and finally has discovered that you don't have to look for it and you don't have to go anywhere for it, but you can find it right within yourself, inside. And so, and this idea of being in all things at once that we're talking about here, and the second principle of manifesting, spiritual manifesting, which is trusting in yourself and the wisdom that created you. And this idea of not having to go anywhere, and that it is within you, since it is everywhere. It is not only within you, but it is you. And the meaning of this is that God is not to be found so much as discovered within yourself. The statement, "You and the Father are one," quote unquote, is more than an ecclesiastical admonition. It's a statement of our own reality. And with practice, we can come to learn to know this reality for ourselves and begin to experience it personally. And we can hopefully learn to assist others by projecting our energy and giving them strength and sustenance. Actually, it is not a skill to learn so much as it is trusting the energy that is us to be a part of us. Allowing. And it may be the most effective way to trust your reality is that through this power of meditation or communication with that which you are a part of, that which is you, some call it prayer, but this version of trust offer us seemingly magical methods for creating and manifesting the divine desire. See, everything that comes into reality is from a divine idea. Why do we call it a divine idea? I don't know. Because it allows something to come from nothing into something. There has to be something a little bit amazing about that. If you don't want to call it divine, that's just fine. But here we are going to call it a divine idea, something that is in harmony with this force, with this energy, with this spaciness, this wave form realm that turns into the physical realm, into what we see created here in reality. The Empire State Building began with an idea, and it didn't exist before there was this divine idea in the mind of many or a few whoever came up with this divine idea and then believed and trusted and followed through with action and effort into manifesting this divine idea into a giant towering structure. But it's important to realize that it wasn't there and it didn't exist, and it first only existed in the realm of the mind and as an idea, non-physical. And this blossomed and grew in the non-physical realm as waves, and eventually became, through effort and action and determination and desire, like Think and Grow Rich has taught us. And if you've never read that, be sure at least to listen to, a breakdown of the ideas of that. But it is most important for those of us wishing to do this manifesting process. And it is the idea of a burning desire, backed, a definite purpose as well, and a vision and an idea of where we know where we want to go. And so this definite purpose backed by this burning desire. And the word there, burning, like it is something within us that we just can't put out. It's like this candle flame that never flickers, though the worst goes before us. This is another Wayne Dyer metaphor. I give him credit for everything I say here. So I am no master. Once again, disclaimer. This is just me sharing my thoughts and my opinions in this journey of everything I've learned from all the wonderful authors, poets, mystics, philosophers, and sages of the ages, so that we may come to know this wisdom for ourselves and maybe have a little more comfort, peace, enjoyment in our lives, a higher quality of life. So once again, thank you for being here. I love and appreciate you. Be sure to smash the like and share this with somebody who is like-minded. But so this idea that it is our reality, with practice, we can learn to know this reality, and we can learn to see the aura around all living things. We can learn to assist others by projecting our energy. And this is trusting in the energy that is already a part of us, trusting in yourself and trusting in the wisdom that created you. It may be the most effective way to trust your reality is through this power of quote unquote prayer, a communication, a meditation with that which we are a part of and that is us. But first, we may have to shift old preconceptions concerning the idea of prayer. Now, this is very important because we've been sold, many ideas and dogmas to think of things a certain way, but we have to begin to shift out of our old preconceptions and out of our programming. And what was spoken about in previous videos is transcending our conditioning from the ideas that we've been taught throughout life and from society that we are not in charge of our lives and that force is something outside of us. And coming to know that we are in charge of our lives and that force is within each and every one of us. And then the other idea that comes from our conditioning is that people cannot manifest, and it's all a function of a cosmic throw of dice. It's all just happenstance out here. But we need to begin to come to know that we can do this and we have this power. And also the idea that, oh, I've tried this before, but it never works for me. The C syndrome, where you shoot a basketball and you miss and you go, see, I can never do this. But we know if you work and practice, you can do this. And finally, the idea that we've been told from our conditioning is all this spiritual stuff and this mystical, being able to create from your desire, from the world of the spirit to the world of form, is only reserved for highly evolved beings, gurus, and divine masters. But these gurus, once again, and divine masters have told us every time that you have this power within you to create and that you can do all the things that I have done, a worker of miracles once said, and even greater things. The gift of fish and loaves for feeding the hungry, a healing for the blind, and these kind of miracles that we seem to think of as impossible and reserved for only great masters other than ourselves. But once again, each and every one of us has this power for ourselves. If we can begin to trust in ourselves, in our own inner wisdom, and the divinity that is a part of us, and we can begin to become aware of our highest self and to know and live from our highest self, and then we can begin to trust in ourselves and the wisdom that created us. But once again, it's interesting. See, since it is everywhere and it is not only within you and it is us, the meaning of this is that God is not to be found, and what we want to manifest is not to be discovered somewhere else, but that it is within ourselves already. And so, this idea of prayer, we must first have to shift the old preconceptions concerning prayer and discover a whole new inner vision about what this idea means for us, being one with God and not seeing God as a judge and a ruler and someone to condemn us, because these are human characteristics and God is far above and beyond any human notions that we may try to apply. This may sound radical or even blasphemous in a notion to us that come from very religious backgrounds, but it is the source of all spiritual traditions. This idea of experiencing oneness with the divine energy. And so here are a few examples before we finish up today from different spiritual philosophies. Christianity will tell us the kingdom of heaven is within you. Islamic traditions will tell us those who know themselves know their God. Buddhism will tell us, look within. You will discover that you are the Buddha. Vedanta, a part of Hinduism, will tell us that Atman, which is an individual consciousness, and Brahman, which is the universal consciousness, so us and God, are but one, are one thing. So the Atman, which is us, and the Brahman, which is God, are one. This comes to us from a part of Hinduism. Yoga, which is another part of Hinduism, tells us that God dwells within you, but not just within you, but God dwells within you as you. You are not doing anything, but rather you are being done. We are what God is doing. Just like the waves on the surface of the ocean is what the ocean is doing. Confucianism will tell us heaven, earth, and human are of but one body. And the Upanishads, part of Hinduism, also will tell us by understanding the self, all this universe is known. And so once again, overcoming our conditioning in this area is crucially important. At first, we may be able to accept this idea on an intellectual level. Remember, this is what we were talking about in the beginning of this video, the difference between knowing it in the heart and truly knowing it as compared to believing it and subjecting it to logic and intellectual activity in an attempt to break it down and separate it into categories to try to understand it. This is a non-spiritual process because, as we know, everything is one, and so to break it down and to separate everything wouldn't make sense in that way. So I suggest, Dr. Wayne Dyer says, because once again, we may be able to accept this idea on an intellectual level, but be unable to make it into our authentic experience. And so he suggests that we make a communication with ourselves or the God force that is a part of us and everything that we see by using it to replace the random, continuous thoughts that we have all day. And use this trust to commune with that divine intelligence, with God, rather than to be in constant state of chatter. Replace thoughts about your experiences with the experience of prayer. For instance, praying in this sense can be a sentence such as, sacredness, guide me now, or sacred love, divine love, divinity, if you want to replace the word sacredness there. Flow through me now, and silently recite it instead of thinking thoughts of negativity and judgment of others and yourself and all the things that you don't want to be happening. If we, once again, what we think, the greatest secret, the secret of the universe, what you think about expands. And so we need to begin to replace our thoughts of negativity, the things that we don't want to expand. Oh, I don't have enough of this, or I never, none of this ever works out for me, or I'm just stuck this way forever. We need to begin to replace these thoughts and clear the inner self of this ego chatter so that what we desire and what desires us can grow and blossom. Remember the tomato seed. It is a potentiality. There is no tomatoes within the seed. There's just this quiet dust. That was gentlemen, ladies, and lads. That was a different, sorry. Emily Dickinson with a wonderful poem there. This quiet dust. But allow this sacredness, this divinity to flow through you. And remind yourself that you are a part of that and everything that you desire. And actually, what you desire desires you. And so if we can trust and remove our doubt and begin to know our highest self and trust in ourselves and the wisdom that created us, we're well on our way on the path to becoming a spiritual manifester and manifesting your destiny. We'll leave it there for today, ladies and gentlemen. That is a boom to part of the second principle of spiritual manifesting from Dr. Wayne Dyer, as well as my ramblings and additions to this kind of thought. I've been listening to Wayne Dyer and his audiobooks a lot this last week or so, and it's very important to me. It helps me to see my life in a new way and to help me get through my days with a new perspective. Because remember, you can change your thoughts and you can change your life. And what that means is when you change the way that you look at things, the things that you look at change for you. And if you're doing this in a positive way, then what you experience should be more positive for you as well. All right, we'll leave that there, ladies and gentlemen. That is a boom to manifest your destiny. And the second principle, about halfway through that chapter. And next week, we'll be going through this idea of prayer and trust, beginning to look at prayer in a different way. And then that peace is the very result of being able to trust ourselves in the wisdom that created us, and that is a part of us. Remember, the definition of enlightenment from Dr. Wayne Dyer's teacher, Nisargadatta Maharaj, I believe, was to be enlightened is to be immersed in and surrounded by peace. The higher self wants us to experience only one thing, which is peace, which is the definition of enlightenment. Now, the more we trust in the wisdom that creates all things, including ourselves, the more we will be trusting in ourselves. And the result of this trusting is that an enormous sense of peace becomes available to you, to us, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much. I love and appreciate each and every one of you. Be sure to expand the description. I have this book linked in the description below in the video box there below. Information box, just hit more. And you will find an Amazon affiliate link. It gives me a few cents if you go through that link and help support me and the work I do here. So you can get this for yourself to put it on your shelf. So you can have the reference in the future when you're going through these kind of things, as well as for following along in this series. Or if you'd like to go back and go through the series again in the future with somebody else who may need this for themselves. This is part of why I'm doing this, is so there can be a catalog, a collection of this, that if I ever have to try to relate to maybe, my child in the future, my nephew, my niece, anybody that we know, coworker, somebody who is interested, somebody who is ready. Because remember, the great teaching is that when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. So all we have to do is begin the journey, ladies and gentlemen, and the steps up the ladder to enlightenment, to whatever you want to call it, will begin to appear for us, and so often in a form different than we imagine. But remember the great quote by Henry David Thoreau that if you advance confidently in the direction of your dreams and desire to live a life that you have imagined, you will be met by a success unexpected in common hours. And that final part there, unexpected and common hour, I mean, unexpected to what we normally see happen. And then the miraculous becomes a possibility for each and every one of us. All right. I'll leave that there, ladies and gentlemen. Also in the description box below, you can find a link to my Etsy shop and my landscape paintings, as well as a link to C60 Power, the ultimate antioxidant known to man, Nobel Prize winning. Give yourself the gift of health. All right. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. I love and appreciate each and every one of you. Remember to be the change that you want to see, be the example you want to set. Remember, seek to achieve and maintain happiness through enlightenment, through a greater awareness of the nature of ourselves, spirituality, psychology, so that through this awareness we can increase the quality of our lives and the lives of those around us, as well as remember to seek to discover the lost wisdom of the ages and the mysteries of our history. There is no way to happiness, ladies and gentlemen. Why? Because happiness is the way, is what we must create the ability within ourselves to bring to life as a process, rather than a result in something we've always thought, oh, when I get that, I'll finally be happy. And then when we can do that, we are there, and the entire journey is wonderful. Hopefully. All right. Love you, ladies and gentlemen. Until next time, once again, be the change you want to see. Be the example you want to set. Thank you. No, 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 no.